She told me it was a team-building retreat. Strictly work, nothing personal, just a few days of professional development with her department on a cruise ship organized by the company. No guests allowed, no plus ones, no exceptions. She said it so cleanly, so professionally, like it was already decided, not even open for discussion. I nodded, pretending to understand, but something about her tone didn't sit right. Not just the words, but the silence behind them. She didn't ask for my opinion. She informed me. What really made me stop and think was her behavior 2 nights before she left. She turned off her location sharing on our devices. Said it was just for privacy while she was away. She also cleared her browsing history, not just on her laptop, but on her work tablet, which she rarely used at home. Small things, not enough to accuse her of anything. But when you've been with someone long enough, you learn to read the spaces between their actions. And right then, those spaces were louder than any explanation she gave. She packed light, considering it was a 4-day trip. 2 dresses, 1 formal outfit, very little makeup, and 1 swimsuit she hadn't worn in over a year. It wasn't the practical kind either. It was the kind you wear when you want to be seen. When I asked her which of her coworkers would be going, she gave me vague answers, first names only, no titles, no details. She didn't say who her cabin mate would be. Said she hadn't been assigned yet. When I offered to drop her at the port, she declined. Said a company shuttle was taking the whole group together from the office. But I already knew there was no shuttle. I'd done my own research by then. Quietly, carefully. I wasn't trying to trap her. I just needed to know if I was going crazy. Turns out, the company wasn't even sponsoring this cruise. It had been booked privately through a third-party executive retreat group. The name on the reservation was hers. But the second guest listed? It wasn't a colleague. It wasn't someone from her team. It wasn't even someone from her department. It was the CEO. I knew his name. I'd met him once, briefly, at a company dinner where he barely looked me in the eye and referred to me as the plus one. He was smooth, polished, the kind of man who shook hands with one person while looking over their shoulder for someone more important. That night, I chalked it up to executive arrogance. Now, I wasn't so sure, so I bought a ticket. It took some maneuvering, some calls, and more than a few hours pretending to be an interested traveler. But I got on the same cruise, booked my own room, separate deck, paid for it all myself. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest friend. This wasn't a confrontation plan. I wasn't going to charge across the deck and scream accusations in front of a crowd. I just wanted to see, to know without interpretation, without spin. I wanted the truth. Not from her mouth, but from her actions. The morning she left, I kissed her goodbye. She smiled like nothing was off, like she wasn't holding a secret tightly folded in her suitcase. I watched her get in the car, watched her wave through the window, watched her disappear around the corner. 24 hours later, I boarded the ship from a different port. I didn't look for her right away. I spent the first day walking the decks, observing. She hadn't seen me yet. I was careful. Sunglasses, hat, blending in with the crowd. I wasn't hiding because I was ashamed. I was observing because I needed clarity. I needed to see what version of herself she'd become when she thought I wasn't looking. And when I finally spotted her on the upper deck, laughing at some joke the CEO was whispering far too close to her ear, I knew I'd made the right decision. She wasn't just working. She wasn't networking. She was performing, and the audience was him. Not the team. Not the company. Just him. But I didn't approach her. Not yet. The second day on the cruise felt like watching a play unfold. Each scene choreographed with subtle glances and shared laughter that didn't belong in a professional setting. I followed at a distance, never close enough to be recognized. Always just another guest blending into the crowd. She walked beside the CEO as if they were equals, not boss and employee. Their conversations weren't about work. I could tell by the tone, by the casual way she placed her hand on his arm when he leaned in to say something, by the way she laughed. Not politely, not dutifully, but fully, as if she'd forgotten the version of herself that came home to me every night and claimed she was just tired. At breakfast, they sat alone at a table for 2 near the window, her chair angled slightly toward him, body language open, relaxed. I found a table behind a decorative column and pretended to read the menu while stealing glimpses through the reflection on the glass. She wasn't wearing her usual work blazer or company shirt. She was in a light summer dress I hadn't seen her pack, the kind of thing she used to wear on our early dates. The CEO handed her a coffee and said something that made her shake her head and roll her eyes playfully. I saw him rest his hand lightly on her wrist for a moment longer than necessary, and she let him. It was surreal, like watching someone impersonate the woman I loved, except the performance was too effortless to be an act. It was clear now. This retreat wasn't about development or leadership exercises. It was about proximity, privacy, and opportunity. This was a curated escape, far from office walls, where lines could blur and accountability didn't follow anyone up the gangway. Later that afternoon, I saw her walking through the spa deck with him again. This time, they weren't talking, just strolling, her sunglasses pushed up on her head, his hand resting on the small of her back as they entered a private lounge marked VIP guests only. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. The damage wasn't in what I couldn't see. It was in what she never tried to hide from the man she was with now, and what she'd worked so hard to keep from me. That evening, something shifted. I got a message from an unknown number. Just a simple note. You're not as invisible as you think. No name. No context. But I knew where it came from. And I knew it wasn't her. It was him. The CEO had noticed me. I don't know if he recognized my face from that single dinner months ago, or if someone from the crew connected the dots. But it didn't matter. The tone of the message wasn't a threat. It was a warning cloaked in arrogance. A message from someone who thought they controlled the narrative, who believed I was just a jealous outsider desperate to confirm what I already suspected. He wanted me to feel small, outplayed, too late, but he didn't know why I was there. It wasn't to expose her. It wasn't even to confront him. It was to decide, quietly and completely, who I would be when this story ended. I had already accepted the truth. Now I needed to act on it. Not with fury, not with revenge, but with precision. That night, I prepared everything. I gathered the photos I'd taken, screenshots of their public calendar, itinerary overlaps, timestamps, the visible intimacy captured in unguarded moments. I included the message he sent me. I didn't send it to her. I didn't even send it to HR. I sent it to someone higher, his superior, the chairman of the board. I didn't add a caption, didn't sign my name, just forwarded the evidence. Clean, simple, no emotion. Then I sat on my balcony and watched the ocean for hours, the waves stretching endlessly beneath the moonlight. Below, I could hear the laughter from the cocktail lounge. Music, glasses clinking, voices carrying across the water. And somewhere in that crowd, she was still playing the part, unaware that the curtain was already coming down. I didn't sleep much that night, but I didn't pace either. I didn't question my decision. I knew what was coming, not because I'd forced it, but because lies can only live in darkness and I had just turned on the lights. The morning after I sent the email, the mood on the ship shifted subtly, like a current beneath calm water. From the outside, nothing appeared out of place. The breakfast buffet still opened at 7 sharp. Tourists still lined up on the sun deck. Crew members moved briskly from task to task. But something had cracked beneath the surface, and I could feel it in the way staff glanced at each other, in the whispered conversations among the executive types, and most clearly, in the way she suddenly started looking over her shoulder. I saw her that morning from across the atrium, standing at the concierge desk with her phone in one hand, sunglasses pushed into her hair, brows drawn into a tight, nervous crease. She was pacing slightly, not in control like the past 2 days. Her posture had changed. Her confidence, the quiet kind she wore like perfume, had slipped. She was agitated, distracted. She didn't see me watching, but I watched everything. The call she made didn't connect. She tried again. Her lips tightened. She turned and walked off quickly, toward the private elevator. I followed at a distance, not to catch her, but to witness the unraveling. She wasn't the composed professional anymore. She was someone scrambling to cover tracks that had already been followed. Less than an hour later, A formal-looking man in a navy blazer I hadn't seen before boarded the ship via the private dock. He wasn't vacationing. He moved with the clipped authority of someone sent to fix a problem no one else had the power to solve. I didn't know his name, but I knew his type. The kind of man who never raises his voice because he never needs to, his presence is enough. He was escorted discreetly through staff corridors, out of sight from most guests, but not out of mine. By noon, the CEO was gone. No announcement, no scene. One moment he was there, smiling through a group photo by the main bar, and the next, his name was removed from the guest roster and his presence scrubbed from the scheduled talks for the afternoon. Rumors spread quickly. Emergency business back home, one woman said. Sudden health issue, claimed another. But I knew the truth. His mistake hadn't just been the affair. It had been arrogance. Thinking the rules didn't apply at sea. Thinking no one would notice. Thinking I wouldn't act. She remained on board. That surprised me. I expected them to disappear together, or at the very least, for her to claim she needed to cut the trip short for personal reasons. But she stayed. She appeared at lunch alone. No phone in her hand. No smile on her lips. She barely ate, just moved her fork in slow circles around the edge of her plate. That evening I saw her again. This time in the observation lounge. She wasn't with anyone. No friends, no coworkers, no excuses. She sat at the bar, a glass of white wine in front of her, untouched. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon, but it was clear her thoughts were far from peaceful. There was no show now, no laughter, just silence, and maybe, finally, reflection. She never turned around. I sat several tables behind, just close enough to see her face, just far enough to remain invisible. I didn't need her to see me. I wasn't there for confrontation. I was there to close the loop, to see the story through to its final chapter, not with rage but with resolution. I left the lounge before she did, walked the upper deck in the warm night air, the hum of the engine beneath my feet, the ocean vast and endless on either side. I felt something that wasn't quite peace yet, but was close, a shedding of something heavy, the last remnants of hope I hadn't even known I was still carrying. Back in my cabin, I found a note had been slipped under my door. No envelope, just folded paper, written in familiar handwriting. Did you know the whole time? I don't even know what to say. Please talk to me. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. There was nothing left for either of us to say that wouldn't be a repetition of something already lived. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking to rewrite the narrative. And I wouldn't be a character in her version anymore. The next morning, the cruise docked. People shuffled down the gangways with sunburned faces and overstuffed bags, chatting about excursions and sunsets and overpriced drinks. I walked off quietly, one hand on the rail, sunglasses on, head clear. She was 3 people ahead of me in line. I recognized the back of her neck, the way she shifted her weight from one foot to the other. She never looked back. Neither did I. The days that followed were quieter than I anticipated. Not in the world around me. Cities buzzed, people moved on, work resumed, but in my own head, after everything I'd seen, everything I'd learned, there was no more debating what was real and what wasn't. There was no grief for what I'd lost, because the version of her I had loved didn't exist on that ship. That version wore a mask she had long since stopped taking off. And now that the mask had slipped, I had nothing to mourn. Just an empty place where the truth had finally settled. She messaged me again 3 days after we docked. This time it wasn't vague. No, can we talk? Or please respond. It was longer, more raw. She said she knew I had been there. Said she saw me on the deck the last night and hadn't had the courage to speak. She wrote that she never meant for it to become what it did. That the retreat started off innocent. A chance to network, to impress leadership. But somewhere along the line, she crossed a line and couldn't find her way back. She claimed it hadn't gone as far as I thought, whatever that meant, but she admitted that trust had been broken, that she understood why I'd left. She asked for a chance to explain in person. Not to win you back, she wrote, but because I owe you honesty. It should have felt like a small victory, an apology, an admission, something, but it didn't. It felt like a confession made too late, after the judge had already passed the sentence and the doors had already closed. I read it once, then again, and then I deleted it. Not out of cruelty, not to hurt her, but because I didn't need it. Closure isn't something other people give you. It's something you give yourself when you finally understand your worth. What she called a mistake, I called a choice. A series of them. Each moment she let the lie breathe longer, each conversation where she reassured me while planning something else behind my back, each deliberate move she made to block me out of the truth. Those were choices. And choices define people more than apologies ever will. I moved into a new place shortly after. Nothing extravagant, just mine. A quiet third-floor apartment with tall windows and a view of trees instead of buildings. I furnished it slowly, intentionally. No rush to fill the space. I wanted to feel every part of it as mine, free of history or compromise. The first thing I hung on the wall was a map. Not of the cruise, not of the city we shared, but of the mountains, where I'd always said I wanted to go and never had. I started planning that trip. For me, no distractions, no explanations. People kept asking why I looked different, lighter somehow, as if I'd let something go. And I had. I'd let go of the weight of pretending, of fighting for a relationship I had been the only one holding up. I'd let go of waiting for her to come around, waiting for her to choose me, waiting for her to stop building futures I wasn't invited into. I wasn't angry, not anymore. I was just done. The CEO's resignation was announced a week later, quietly, no scandal, no headlines, just a vague press release citing personal reasons and a desire to explore other ventures. Her name didn't appear anywhere in the announcement. But I knew. She knew. And I'm sure a few others knew too. That was enough. I didn't need her to be publicly exposed or ruined. I wasn't looking for vengeance. I wanted clarity, and I'd gotten it. The last time I heard from her was a postcard. Handwritten. No return address. It said, "I still think about the look on your face when I told you about the cruise. I knew then. I just didn't stop myself. I'm sorry." I held it in my hand for a moment, read it twice, then slid it into the back of a drawer and never touched it again. You can forgive someone in silence. You can move on without fireworks, without drama, without making them understand. Sometimes the cleanest break is the one where nothing more is said, where the story ends not with confrontation but with absence. A door closed, a chapter finished. And that's what this was. Not revenge, not regret, just release. Life has a strange way of returning to stillness after the storm. Not quickly, not all at once, but gradually, like a shoreline that remembers how to be calm after being battered by waves. I didn't rush into anything after it all ended. I wasn't interested in proving I'd moved on, or in showing the world how well I was doing. My healing wasn't something I needed to advertise. It was private, quiet, personal. The way all real growth is. In the weeks that followed, I deleted the last of our photos. Not in a burst of anger, but with a still hand and a clear mind. I didn't need to keep reminders of a life I didn't recognize anymore. I removed her number, archived our conversations, and tossed the few things she'd left behind into a donation box. Not because I hated her, but because holding on to pieces of someone who had already let go of you is a slow form of self-destruction. I didn't want to shrink myself inside old memories. I wanted space for something real. I went on that trip to the mountains. Alone. No distractions. Just a bag, a notebook, and silence. It was the first time in years I'd gone anywhere without coordinating schedules, without checking in, without the weight of someone else's expectations. I hiked trails where no one knew my name. I slept without dreams. I sat on the edge of cliffs and watched the clouds roll like slow-moving thoughts across the sky. And in that space, I didn't find answers. I didn't need them. I found something better myself. I realized then that she hadn't broken me. She hadn't even changed me. She had only revealed something I needed to see. That love built on half-truths and omissions will always collapse, no matter how tightly you hold it together. That no amount of loyalty can fix what someone else is actively choosing to destroy. And most importantly, that silence isn't weakness. Sometimes, it's your greatest form of power. The decision not to argue, not to plead, not to explain, just to walk away and never return. One evening, months later, I ran into someone from her office. Someone who had been at that same dinner months before the cruise, the one where I was just the plus one. They looked surprised to see me, like I was a ghost from a story they'd heard but never expected to face. "I heard what happened," they said carefully. I just nodded. "A lot happened. She's not there anymore," they added. "Left not long after everything blew up. No one really talks about it." "I'm not surprised," I replied. They hesitated, then said, "She used to talk about you, you know. Said you were too good for her. That she never thought she'd get caught." I smiled, not bitterly, not with pride. Just softly. "She didn't get caught. She just forgot I pay attention. And that was the truth. I didn't expose her because I wanted revenge. I acted because I knew she was hoping I'd stay blind. That I'd keep playing the part of the man waiting on shore, smiling as she boarded a ship with someone else. But I wasn't that man. Not anymore. Maybe I never had been. These days I live differently. More aware. More intentional. I ask harder questions. I trust slower. But I love just as deeply because the answer isn't to build walls. It's to build standards. And now I know the difference. So if you're reading this, if you've been there, if you've watched someone lie straight through their smile, if you've stood quietly in the room while they crafted a future without your name in it, this is for you. You don't need to catch them in the act. You don't need to shout. You don't need to beg. You just need to know when to step back and let their story collapse without you holding it up. And when you do, when you finally choose yourself, you'll find that peace doesn't come from answers. It comes from finally walking away from the question that never deserved you. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of a moment you survived, leave a comment and let others know they're not alone. And don't forget to subscribe. There are more stories like this, honest, quiet, and real, coming soon.